So I've already talked a bit about how I would use Storybird in my introduction to Storybird, but I'll just go into a little bit more detail here. The most obvious one is as a scaffolded, most obvious use is as a scaffolded creative writing exercise. So after a unit that teaches narrative composition, grammar, narrative structure, literary devices, etc., the teacher asks students individually or in pairs to write their own story using storyboard pictures as prompts. Students publish drafts online for peer editing and teacher feedback, and final drafts are republished and evaluated by the teacher based on criteria. And as I said in the intro, what I like about it is that it's a scaffolded exercise. It's not cutting the students loose and insisting that they be creative. It gives them a penultimate step before they are required to do their own completely original free writing, which is, what ultimately would be the goal. There's lots of different things you can do with this. It fits the net generation criteria perfectly. It's web-based. It's creative. There's collaboration. You can have co-writers. You can invite them in. There's freedom to choose anything they want to do. And in terms of cognitive apprenticeship, it is scaffolded and coached, which is really quite nice. And there's lots of models online for them to read as well. I'm going to skip forward to my number 3 here because it's related to the first one. You could also use it as a free writing assignment. One of our classmates suggested this to me, and it was a great idea. It could be used as an ongoing writing routine using storyboard illustration as prompts, weekly or daily in class exercises. You could create a personal anthology that could be kept on Storybird's online collection, which is kind of neat as opposed to the old-fashioned journals. At the end of each term, students can choose their best writing to share with the class. It's kind of a show and tell. They can get up in front of the class and read it. You could do it once a year, or 3 times a year, however often you want. Choose one student a day to read something. Teachers could grade 1 per semester or a couple at the end of the year. It depends on what the teacher wants to do with it. It's a very flexible way to do it. Again, what I like about this is that it follows the model of how we learn. Students must understand facts and ideas in the context as a conceptual framework. The pictures themselves are loosely organized in a series that suggest a narrative structure, and so it gives students a conceptual framework on how to create their own story. Again, it doesn't cut them free. Cut them loose to create their own completely original one. Students these days are very, very used to visual storytelling. The comic books, graphic novels, cartoons on TV, the movie Frozen, everything visual. We are a very, very visual culture, and these visual pictures, loosely linked narrative pictures, tap into that deep, deep understanding that's been drilled into them since they were little babies almost. So it uses that to help stimulate their own storytelling. More interestingly, perhaps, or kind of differently anyway, you could use it as an editing critical thinking tool. After a unit that teaches narrative composition, the same as before, the teacher asks students to browse through the Storybird archive and choose a couple of stories they would like to critique. Teachers should remind students that these stories are amateur and most likely contain obvious flaws, as I discussed in the intro. Teacher could ask students to identify flaws in the text, specifically flaws in literary elements that have been discussed in this particular unit, so the grammar structure, literary devices, etc. Students can download the story in PDF, and like a teacher providing feedback, they could annotate it using Adobe Acrobat Pro. This is kind of a neat thing, I think. I've seen, as a tutor, I've seen my students being asked to annotate texts, and that gives them a sense of power. That, yeah, I'm the boss. I have ideas. I'm kind of critiquing this, and it's a confidence builder. Students are asked to rate the stories using a point or star system based on established criteria, and to test the narrative elements being taught. And finally, teachers evaluate the annotations. Teachers they can say, well, these are thoughtful comments. These are not thoughtful comments. You should go a bit deeper here. Go a bit deeper there. So those are the 3 ways you could use to use Storybird.